Now hold on, because this right here just crossed into something else. Offset is now being accused of leaking court documents, asking for a DNA test on Cardi B's child. And it doesn't stop there. The judge actually approved one of those requests. Let that sink in for a second. Because this is not just drama anymore. This is legal, public, and permanent. And here's the part that doesn't sit right. These documents were sealed, so if they're out now, somebody close to him wanted this information seen. That's not a mistake, that's a move. And once you look at it like that, the whole situation starts to feel different. Because now it's not just about questioning paternity, it's about timing, intention, and what he's really trying to do by putting this out there. Especially when you factor in Stefon Diggs being in the picture and everything already surrounding that situation, now it starts looking less like confusion and more like pressure being applied from a different angle. And let's be real, you don't take something this private and make it public unless you're trying to send a message. But the question is, who is that message really for? Because if this was meant to get a reaction, it's already doing something else entirely. It's shifting how people see him. And once that shift starts, it doesn't stop easily. And that's where this situation starts getting messy in a way that's hard to walk back from. Most people are looking at this and thinking it is just another messy situation between Offset and Cardi B, just more back and forth, more drama, more headlines. But that explanation is too simple for what is actually happening here. Because asking for a DNA test is one thing. Taking sealed court documents and letting them leak into the public is something else entirely. Now hold on, because that changes the entire angle. This is not just about questioning paternity, this is about making that question public. And once you do that, it is no longer private conflict, it becomes reputation damage. And that is where things start to feel different. Because if this was really about getting answers, it would stay in court, quiet, controlled, handled through the legal system. But that is not what happened. Instead, it ended up online, circulating, getting picked apart in real time. That is not how you solve a problem, that is how you create one. And here's the thing, once something like this goes public, you cannot undo it. The question is already out there, the doubt is already planted. And that affects more than just the two people involved. It affects the kids, the narrative, and how everyone connected to this situation is seen moving forward. And when you look at it from that angle, this stops being about confusion and starts looking intentional. Because you do not take something this sensitive and expose it unless you are trying to shift something. And once you realize that, the situation stops feeling like drama and starts feeling like strategy, and that is where the real problem begins. And this is where the real problem starts showing itself. Because this didn't just come out of nowhere. This has been building, and now it's reaching a point where it's spilling into places it was never supposed to go. Now hold on, because when you step back and look at the pattern, it starts making a lot more sense. There have already been accusations of tension, harassment, and things escalating behind the scenes between Offset and Cardi B. And now you add this on top of it, a public move that questions something as serious as paternity. That's not small, that's not something you do lightly, because once you go there, you're not just questioning a situation, you're questioning a person's integrity. And that's where it gets heavy. Because if this was handled privately, it stays contained. But once it becomes public, it turns into something else entirely. Now it's not just about what happened, it's about how it looks. And how it looks is messy, especially with Stefon Diggs being part of the situation, because now it pulls in another layer. Now you've got relationships, timelines, and public perception all colliding at once. And when that happens, people don't wait for facts, they start forming narratives. And those narratives move fast. That's what makes this a problem. Not just the action itself, but what it creates after. Because now you've got doubt, you've got speculation, and you've got something that keeps growing every time it gets talked about. And once that kind of momentum starts, it doesn't stay contained. It spreads. And when it spreads, that's when the pressure starts building in a way that's hard to control.
She says a lot of artists or celebrities that have really big, major businesses that are successful, they didn't build their brand on the second or third year of being big celebrities. They built their brand when they were 7 to 8 to 10 years in the business. And I feel like right now is the perfect time. She adds, I'm 33 years old. This is the year. It's like God is telling me it's gonna be now or never. Take advantage of it.
And this is where the pressure starts turning into something you can't ignore. Because once that doubt is out there, it doesn't just sit still. It moves, it grows, and it pulls everything else into it. Now hold on, because this is where it gets messy in a different way. The moment those documents hit the public, the situation stopped being contained to court and started becoming a full narrative. People are not just looking at the DNA request anymore. They are connecting it to everything that came before. The arguments, the accusations, the restraining order, all of it starts lining up. And once people start connecting dots, whether they are right or wrong, the story takes on a life of its own. That's what makes this dangerous. Because now it's not just about what actually happened, it's about what people believe happened. And those two things don't always match. At the same time, there is still no sign of this being handled quietly, no attempt to shut it down, no clear effort to contain the narrative. And that absence only adds more fuel to it, because when something this serious is out in the open and no one is stepping in to control it, people assume there is more behind it. And once that assumption starts, it spreads faster than facts ever could. That's how situations escalate. Not just from actions, but from reactions layered on top of them. And now you've got public attention, speculation, and personal history all stacking at once. And once that kind of momentum builds, it starts turning into consequences that don't stay online, they start affecting everything around it. And this is where the consequences start hitting in a way that's hard to ignore. Because once something like this goes public, it doesn't just stay as a headline, it starts changing how people see you. And right now, the image around Offset is shifting fast. This isn't being seen as confusion or a private legal move anymore. It's being read as something calculated, something meant to provoke, and that changes everything. Because once people start attaching intention to your actions, every move after that gets questioned. And let's be real, questioning the paternity of your own kids in public is not something that just fades away. That sticks, that follows you. That becomes part of the narrative whether you meant it that way or not. And the impact doesn't stop there. Because now it starts affecting how people look at the entire situation with Cardi B. What used to be seen as relationship issues now starts looking like something deeper, something more hostile. And that shift matters. Because once the tone changes, the support changes with it. People start picking sides, forming opinions, and the conversation moves in a direction that's harder to control. And here's the part that hits the hardest. This doesn't just affect the two of them, there are kids involved. And once something like this is out in the open, it doesn't disappear, it sits there. It becomes something that can be seen later, questioned later, and felt later. That's not a small consequence, that's long-term impact. And once you reach that point, it's no longer just about what happened, it's about what this creates moving forward. And what it creates doesn't stay contained, it starts affecting the people around you, and that's where things begin to shift again. And that's where things start shifting in a way that's harder to control.
Cardi B says she was reborn after her split from ex-Offset. In a new interview on the Aspire with Emma Grede podcast, the rapper explains how she was transformed personally.
Because once the impact spreads beyond the situation itself, the people around you start moving differently. Now hold on, because this is the part nobody really talks about. Support doesn't disappear all at once, it fades, it gets quieter, and you can already see that happening around Offset. The same energy that used to be loud, supportive, and visible starts pulling back. People stop speaking up, people stop defending. And that silence says more than anything they could actually say. Because when something like this becomes public, everyone connected to it starts doing their own calculation. Stay close or step away. And most of the time, they choose distance. At the same time, the public reaction starts shifting too. The tone changes. What might have started as curiosity turns into criticism, and criticism turns into judgment. And once that shift happens, it spreads fast. Because people follow the narrative, not the facts. And right now, the narrative is not in his favor. And here's the part that hits differently. The silence from Cardi B is still there. No response, no engagement, nothing that slows any of this down. And that absence keeps adding weight to everything else. Because when someone who used to speak up chooses not to, it changes how the situation is read. That's what makes this stage different. It's not just about what happened, it's about how people are reacting to it. And once both the personal circle and the public start pulling back at the same time, the situation becomes much harder to stabilize. And when that stability is gone, that's when the next layer starts revealing itself. Because once the circle starts going quiet, what replaces it is information coming from the inside. Now hold on, because this is where it really starts getting uncomfortable. Those court documents didn't just appear out of nowhere. They were sealed. That means somebody with access made a decision to let them out. And let's be real, that doesn't happen without intention. That's not random. That's not an accident. That's a choice. And once you look at it like that, the situation shifts again. Because now it's not just about what Offset did in court, it's about what's happening behind the scenes. Who's leaking, who's talking, and why this information is being pushed out right now. And that's where the idea of betrayal starts creeping in. Because when private legal matters start becoming public narratives, somebody on the inside is no longer protecting you, and that changes everything. At the same time, the way this information is being received adds another layer. People are not just reacting to the DNA request, they are reacting to the fact that it was exposed. And that exposure makes it feel intentional, like something meant to hurt, to embarrass, or to shift the narrative in a specific direction. And once that perception sets in, it's hard to reverse. Because now it's not just about actions, it's about motive. And motive is what people remember. And here's where it gets worse. There's no strong pushback, no clear denial, nothing that redirects the conversation.
Professionally, after filing for divorce from the Migos alum in 2024, following their on-again, off-again romance through the years.
I don't know if it was like the divorce, or I don't know if something just woke me up, and I feel like I'm definitely a new person.
And when that silence meets a leak like this, people start connecting dots whether they're accurate or not. And once that starts happening, the story grows beyond control. And when it grows like that, it doesn't stay contained to individuals anymore. It starts pulling in everything around it. And once it starts pulling in everything around it, that's when the situation moves beyond just one person. Because now it's not just about Offset or Cardi B anymore. It becomes about how the entire system reacts. Now hold on, because this is where it levels up. The story is no longer contained to court documents or private conflict. It's spreading across media, blogs, and public conversation, and every version adds something new. People start revisiting old situations, old accusations, old patterns, and suddenly this one moment is being connected to everything that came before it. That's how narratives grow, not from one event, but from how that event gets layered onto a larger story. At the same time, the industry starts adjusting, because when something like this becomes public, people connected to it start reassessing their position. Collaborations go quiet, support becomes less visible, and distance becomes more noticeable, even if no one says it out loud. And let's be real, nobody wants to be tied to something that feels unstable. That's just how it works, and that creates another level of pressure. Because now it's not just about personal issues or public opinion, it's about how the system around you responds. And once that system starts pulling back, it creates a ripple effect that touches everything connected to it. And that's when the situation stops being something you can contain. Because now it's not just moving through people, it's moving through platforms, conversations, and perception at scale. And once it reaches that level, controlling it becomes almost impossible. And when it gets to that point, that's when it starts feeling like there's no easy way out. And when it gets to that point, it starts feeling like there's no easy way out. Because once everything reaches this level, every move becomes part of the story. Now hold on, because this is where the pressure really locks in. Anything Offset does from here gets analyzed. If he speaks, people question why now. If he stays quiet, people assume there's something to hide. There is no neutral position anymore. And that's what makes this stage different. It's not just about dealing with one issue. It's about being surrounded by multiple problems that are all connected. The leak, the DNA request, the public reaction, the silence. It's all happening at once. And when everything stacks like that, you can't isolate one part and fix it. It doesn't work like that. At the same time, there's still no clear support stepping in to shift the narrative. No strong ally, no public defense, nothing that slows the momentum down. And when there's no interruption, the narrative keeps moving in one direction. And right now, that direction is not in his favor. And here's where the tension really hits. Because now it's not just about what already happened, it's about what happens next. Every decision carries weight. Every delay adds pressure. And the longer this continues without control, the harder it becomes to turn it around. And once it feels like there's no clear exit, that's when the next move usually becomes more reactive than strategic. And that's when the next move usually stops looking strategic and starts looking desperate. Because when there's no clean way out, people don't slow down, they reach. Now hold on, because this is where the intent becomes harder to ignore. Leaking something this personal, this sensitive, doesn't just create noise, it forces a reaction. And it starts to feel like that might be the point. Because if this was really about clarity, it would stay in court. Quiet, controlled, handled where it belongs. But putting it out like this, that shifts the goal.
Cardi filed for divorce from Offset in 2020 before moving to dismiss the case. In 2024, rep for Cardi confirmed to E! News that she had once again moved to end their marriage, telling E! At the time, it has been a long time coming.
Now it's about attention, about pressure, about forcing the narrative to move in a certain direction. And let's be real, that kind of move comes from somewhere. It comes from frustration, from losing control, from trying to grab something back when everything feels like it's slipping. But here's the problem. When you make a move like that, you don't just shift the narrative, you expose yourself to it. Now everything gets questioned even more. Motive, timing, intention, all of it. And instead of gaining control, it can actually make things worse. Because now it looks like you're reacting, not leading. And once people see that, the perception changes again. At the same time, there is still no visible response from Cardi B. No engagement, no acknowledgement, nothing that feeds into what might have been expected. And that silence hits differently here. Because if this was meant to provoke something, it's not landing the way it was supposed to. And that creates another layer of tension. Because now the move is out there, but the reaction isn't. And when that happens, it leaves everything hanging in a way that feels even more unstable. And when things start feeling that unstable, that's when everything begins to come apart at the same time. And that's when everything starts coming apart at the same time. Because once the pressure reaches this level, it doesn't stay in one place, it spreads across everything. Now hold on, because this is where it really hits. The image, the reputation, and the personal situation are all being affected at once. This is Offset, someone who once moved with control, influence, and confidence, now being seen through a completely different lens. Not as steady, not as calculated, but as reactive. And that shift is heavy. Because once people start seeing you that way, every move you make reinforces it. The narrative has already changed. This is no longer about success or momentum, it's about instability. And once that takes hold, it's hard to break out of it. At the same time, there is still distance from Cardi B. No visible support, no engagement, nothing that balances what's happening. Instead, everything feels disconnected. And that makes the situation look even more one-sided. And here's the part that really lands. This is not just one mistake. This is multiple layers hitting at once. The leak, the doubt, the public reaction, the silence, all of it stacking together. And when everything stacks like that, it creates a full collapse moment. Not something temporary, not something easy to fix, but something that changes how everything is seen moving forward. And once it reaches that point, it's no longer about whether things went wrong. It's about how much of it can actually be recovered. And when you get to that stage, what's left isn't control, it's uncertainty. And when it turns into uncertainty, that's when the situation stops having a clear ending. Because at this point, there's no clean resolution that fixes everything that's already been set in motion. What you're looking at now is something still unfolding, still shifting, and still being shaped in real time. On one side, this could be exactly what it looks like. A situation that spiraled, driven by pressure, frustration, and decisions that went too far. And if that's the case, then the outcome depends on whether Offset can actually regain control of what's already slipping. But on the other side, there's still that question that hasn't gone away. Why take something this private and make it public in the first place? Because if any part of this was intentional, if any part of this was meant to force a reaction or shift the narrative, then everything that follows depends on whether that move actually works. And right now, it doesn't look like it is. Because the one reaction that would have changed everything still hasn't come. The silence from Cardi B is still there, no response, no engagement, no sign that anything is being pulled back into control, and that silence carries weight because it leaves the situation open, unresolved, and moving forward without direction. So now what's left is not an answer, but a question. Is this the moment where everything finally turns around, or the point where it keeps going in the same direction? And once it reaches that point, there's no way to ignore it anymore.